Have you ever wondered why every bulldozer you've ever seen is yellow? Not sometimes yellow, not usually yellow. Almost always, unmistakably, aggressively yellow. It's not a coincidence. It's not branding. It's a decision made in 1931 that accidentally became one of the most important safety choices in construction history. And it almost never happened. To understand why bulldozers are yellow, you first need to picture a world where they weren't. In the early 1900s, the machines that would eventually become the modern bulldozer were heavy, slow, track-driven tractors, powerful but crude. They had no enclosed cab, no air conditioning, no digital display. Just raw mechanical power, steel tracks, and a driver sitting completely exposed to everything around him. And every single one of them was painted battleship gray. That wasn't random. Many of these early tracked machines were used in World War I to drag artillery through mud and trenches across Europe. Gray was a military color, practical, serious, and deliberately designed to not be noticed. When those machines moved from battlefields to construction sites after the war, they brought their gray paint right along with them. Nobody thought twice about it. These machines had just won a world war. Why would anyone question what color they were painted? Nobody questioned it, at first. But as construction boomed across America, roads being carved through wilderness, dams being built, cities expanding at a pace the country had never seen before, a very serious problem began to emerge. Construction sites are gray. The concrete is gray. The gravel is gray. The dust hanging in the air is gray. The fog rolling across a job site at dawn is gray. The limestone being blasted out of hillsides is gray. And when you park a machine that weighs tens of thousands of pounds inside all of that gray, it disappears completely. Workers couldn't see equipment approaching from the side. Spotters misjudged distances. Drivers on nearby roads couldn't tell where the machine ended and the ground began. On busy road construction sites that were operating alongside live traffic, that invisibility wasn't just dangerous, it was a quiet, ongoing catastrophe. Something had to change, and the pressure was building. The man at the center of that change was Ollie Sleeter, the person responsible for painting and hand-lettering Caterpillar tractors since 1917. He had spent over a decade watching these machines work up close. He understood the environment they operated in better than almost anyone sitting in a boardroom. By 1931, Caterpillar had moved well beyond farming equipment. They were now one of the dominant suppliers to highway construction crews across the entire country. And the safety stakes were completely different from working in an open, quiet agricultural field. Workers were everywhere. Traffic was close. Deadlines were tight. And machines were moving constantly in every direction. Sleeter pushed hard for a change, and eventually a committee was formed to choose a new color. And what followed was exactly the kind of debate you'd expect from a group of engineers arguing about paint. The committee first landed on deep orange with a black engine. It looked bold. It looked strong. Manufacturing immediately rejected it. Managing two separate paint colors across an entire production line was too complicated and too costly. Then someone proposed silver. Sleek, modern, professional. Manufacturing rejected that too, because the paint itself was notoriously difficult to apply evenly and consistently at scale. White was thrown into the conversation. Bright red was considered seriously. Each one was debated, tested, and rejected for one reason or another. And then, almost by elimination, the group landed on highway yellow. On December 7, 1931, the internal memo went out across the company. Starting that Monday, all Caterpillar tractors and road machines leaving the factory would carry highway yellow as their standard color, with black trim replacing the old red lettering that had been used for years. It was a clean, decisive change. Two colors, high contrast, simple to apply, and extraordinarily visible from a distance. Nobody celebrated. In fact, the reaction across the dealer network was somewhere between confusion and outright panic. Rumors spread almost immediately that some dealers were actually repainting machines back to gray before putting them on the lot, convinced that customers simply would not buy yellow equipment. Yellow felt wrong on a serious industrial machine. Too bright. Too cheerful. Too far from the rugged, military-inspired image these machines had built their reputation on. Dealers worried they'd be stuck with inventory nobody wanted. Within a few years, those same dealers couldn't keep the yellow machines in stock. Here's where the story gets genuinely fascinating. Because the reason yellow works so powerfully isn't a matter of preference or opinion. It is hardwired into how the human eye functions at a biological level. Of all 7 colors on the visible light spectrum, yellow is the most visible at a distance and in the dark. It is the last color to disappear from human sight as light fades. Whether that's low light at dusk, thick fog on a winter morning, a dust cloud kicked up by a scraper, or the haze of diesel exhaust hanging over a busy site. The human eye processes yellow wavelengths faster than almost any other color in existence, which means that on a busy job site, where a worker might have half a second to react to a machine moving in their direction, yellow buys them precious fractions of time that no other color can provide. Now think about what actually surrounds a bulldozer on a typical job site. Brown earth, gray concrete, black asphalt, beige dust clouds, dark shadows under scaffolding and bridges, green vegetation on the site perimeter. Yellow creates powerful contrast against every single one of those backgrounds simultaneously. No other color on the spectrum performs that consistently across such a wide variety of conditions. White fades and washes out in dust and glare. Orange blends into certain warm-toned soil types. Red disappears alarmingly quickly in low-light conditions. Yellow cuts through all of it, dawn, dusk, heavy fog, or high noon, without compromising once. And there is a psychological dimension working alongside all of that biology. Yellow is a high-energy color that actively stimulates mental alertness. It doesn't just sit there passively waiting to be noticed. It demands attention at a subconscious level. It keeps operators more focused. It triggers a caution response in anyone nearby before they've even consciously registered what they're looking at. That's not marketing language. That's decades of color psychology research confirming what Sleeter's team figured out by accident with paint chips in 1931. OSHA eventually made this all official, formally establishing that yellow signals caution and warns against physical hazards including striking, stumbling, falling, and being caught in moving machinery. What a committee stumbled into through a series of frustrated paint rejections took government safety regulators decades to write into enforceable law. The color was already doing its job long before anyone required it. Once highway yellow proved itself on job sites across America, other manufacturers around the world couldn't ignore what they were seeing. Competitor after competitor followed Caterpillar's lead, not because they were copying a brand, but because the results were undeniable. Yellow gradually became the informal gold standard for heavy construction equipment across the entire global industry. Komatsu, Liebherr, Case, JCB, all eventually gravitating toward the same end of the color wheel, because the safety logic was simply impossible to argue with once you'd seen it work. And those yellow machines went on to build the modern world. Caterpillar track-type tractors helped construct the Hoover Dam in 1936. They were on the ground when the Golden Gate Bridge was completed in 1937. Through World War II, Caterpillar produced over 50,000 bulldozers and tractors to support Allied construction battalions operating across multiple continents. Everywhere civilization was being physically assembled, everywhere concrete was being poured, mountains were being moved, and roads were being pushed through impossible terrain. There was yellow machinery doing the work that nothing else could. Highway yellow served the industry faithfully for 48 years. Then in 1979, Caterpillar retired it and introduced a new, legally protected shade simply called Caterpillar Yellow. Slightly more refined and easier on the eye than the almost neon brightness of the original, but still precisely engineered to be unmistakably visible by day and by night, in sun and in rain. The paint formula has been quietly adjusted over the decades for better durability, better resistance to UV fading, and better performance against the daily abuse these machines endure. But the hue itself, that specific, recognizable, iconic yellow, has never changed. That color is now protected intellectual property. It requires no logo. You see it from across a muddy, chaotic job site, and your brain already knows exactly what it is and exactly what to do about it. One committee, one rejected orange tractor, one stubborn manufacturing department, and one man named Ollie Sleeter who believed, quietly and persistently, that machines this powerful should never be allowed to disappear into their surroundings. The decision made on December 7, 1931, born not from genius but from a process of elimination, reshaped a global industry, influenced workplace safety law across multiple countries, and has been protecting construction workers every single working day for nearly a century. So the next time a bulldozer rolls past you on a job site, or you're sitting in traffic watching one work, take a second. Because you're not just looking at a machine, you're looking at 90 years of accumulated human wisdom about how we see danger, painted bright yellow, so you never have to find out what happens when we don't.